Life After Divorce podcast, and I'm your host, Patricia Levain, separation and divorce coach. I'm so happy you're here to join us today. Our topic is on mediation. I feel it's important to our listeners to have an opportunity to get to hear life stories and actual experiences that people go through when they're faced with a separation and divorce. So I'm really excited to invite Darlene as our guest today. Welcome, Darlene.
Thank you for having me today.
So tell us, what is mediation?
Well, mediation is a process in which an impartial third party, the mediator, facilitates communication and negotiation and promotes voluntary decision-making by the parties to the dispute. So it's actually the people, I guess in this situation, since you're talking about separation and divorce, it would be up to the couple. And they make all the decisions. And that's important to know that as a mediator, I'm not making the decisions regarding anything.
Yeah, I think that's really a really good idea because mediation is important so that they can sort of work it out themselves. And you're sort of the guide, the guide there to be there for them.
Exactly. I guide or in this case, facilitate the process. I help things along.
Mm-hmm. So why would you recommend mediation for people going through a divorce?
Because of all the emotions that is attached with separation and divorce. A lot of people experience anger, frustration, and they just don't know how to get beyond that when they start the conversation with the other party, the other half, their partners. And so with mediators or such as myself, we're that neutral third party. So we can start the conversation off by asking general questions, what their hopes and dreams and wishes are moving forward, or even get down to it like, have you thought about who gets the dog type of thing? When they're in a mediation, because there's that third party there, are usually on their better behaviors, I like to say. So it's somebody that doesn't have a vested interest and is willing to listen to both sides so that, we create that calmness, or I hope we create the calmness while we're having that discussion so that the parties can really talk to each other in a controlled setting and hopefully listen to each other so that they can get down to the issues.
I totally agree about the emotional part where I have a program that part of the program offers a course on building a business relationship with the other partner. And I think what happens is so often is they put their emotions into it and then they don't make sound decisions and they're not ready at the time. I think, mediation is really, really important for that, to have someone there as a third party. But I also think that they shouldn't rush into making decisions too soon. They should really think about their situation, get their emotions intact so that they can make good decisions, because this is based on their future. This isn't just a for now.
Exactly. And part of the process of mediation, especially in my case, I like to have a discussion with each of the parties separately so that I understand what their hopes, dreams, aspirations, wants, and needs are. And then once I get a feel, if you want to call it that, for what each side is looking for, then sometimes by bringing in the parties after that, and then having that joint meeting, that joint mediation, sometimes it allows me that little insight to know what subjects may be a little touchy and what points we can get through, perhaps a little easier. So by setting that up, when we begin the mediation, I like to start off with, a few of the concerns, or because I don't really like calling them issues. I like calling them concerns that they each have. And that, or hopefully that ground rule has been set so that you understand that this could potentially be an easier fix, if you want to put it that way, than some of the other concerns that they have. And once the parties understand that, oh, we got through that, okay, we're in agreement with that, then sometimes it's easier to start moving on to the more pressing matters, the touchier subjects. And but once they see the process and are part of that process, it might, guide them along and make it a little easier for them to really listen to each other.
I gather you probably have more than one session as well. I don't think they can make all those decisions in one session. I would imagine that unless they can have discussions prior to and really talk it through, do you find that happens where they come to you like they're totally lost, or do they have a better idea of what they're doing when they come to you? I'd be curious.
Again, that's why it's easier to have those meetings individually with the parties, so that it builds that foundation, that basis. And sometimes you'll get the phone call, the follow-up email or something afterwards to say, oh, I forgot to add this part in, because it really gets them in the thought thinking process. And sometimes that makes the job a little bit easier. But yes, sometimes we're there. I've done mediations where it's lasted a half day. I've done full day mediations. I've done a full weekend mediation type of thing. And I've also done mediations where we've had to, break and then wait for the parties to, focus, clear their heads a little bit. And then when they're ready to try it again, then we set up those dates and times. So it's really up to the parties on how much work they're willing to put in.
Yeah. I would imagine that there's some of them that are pretty emotional, especially if there's one that doesn't want to really end the marriage. So I would gather that there's a lot of stress going on and emotional feelings and
right,
anger.
And sometimes in those cases where you really have a party that doesn't want to see an end to it, then sometimes mediation might not be the right time until both parties are in agreement that the situation, the marriage, the separation in this case is not moving forward, or sorry, that separation or divorce is moving forward, but the marriage isn't.
Yeah.
And so sometimes counseling prior to mediation would be beneficial in those particular cases.
Yeah, and that's where I totally agree, because that's what I do. I always try to get the person that I'm coaching in a good state of mind so they can make good decisions based on their circumstances, right? How would mediation help children at all? Do you find that having that, the parents go through mediation would help the child? Or do you think it's just strictly a business sort of relationship? I'd be curious to think if mediation could help them in any way.
Absolutely, because you have to take it, well, depending on the ages of the children. So when you have children that are, I'm going to say over the age of 10, because they kind of know where they want to see things. They, one might say, I want to spend more time with mom. One might say, I want to spend more time with dad, or dad and mom and the other mom, whatever the case may be. And sometimes if the parents are both in agreement, sometimes we can bring the kids into the mediation.
Oh, really?
Just for that part, so that I let the kids tell the parents what they want to see, because they're part of it too. And some of the emotional restrictions of parents making decisions based on the termination of the marriage is because of the kids. But if they don't truly understand what the kids want or expect or would like to see happen, then how are they making those decisions that aren't going to be detrimental to the children?
I really like that idea, because I do believe that the kids should have a part of it if they're old enough, and they should have a voice. I think their opinion on what they feel of what's going on is really important, because they have emotions too, and they're going through a lot. Their whole life is changing. They've
That's
got
right.
yeah. So I really like that idea that you offer that. That's fantastic. So what results do you get when going through the mediation? Like, what's some of the results?
Well, that again depends on the parties involved. So sometimes there's too much of a one-sided conversation. So then I have to halt the mediation, because you need both parties, not just one person going, yeah, whatever. That's not a good mediation. So there might be that power imbalance, that power struggle. And if I'm noticing that, I stop the mediation. Sometimes prior to COVID, mind you, I used to separate the parties and put them into separate rooms, especially if you notice that little bit of power struggle. You notice it in some cultures where the men are more dominant and the women are more submissive. But again, you want to make sure that you're addressing those potential concerns. Again, I don't like calling them issues again, but potential concerns. And by separating them and putting them into separate rooms, again, I can go back and forth between the rooms and there's no pressure on either one of the parties to talk to me. And sometimes they'll say, I'll tell you something, but I don't want you to tell them. But just by picking up on their body language and everything else, sometimes you'll be able to go in without directly telling the other party what they had just said, but coming at it from a different angle to see potentially, is this a real concern that we have to address? Because potentially I've been in one mediation where there was a legal aspect to it, where there was physical abuse. And so the mediation had to stop because we had to address that.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, but other than that, when both parties are willing to sit down and really listen to each other, 9 times out of 10, when they're truly listening, they're able to, and I use whiteboard, so I'm writing everything down and they're seeing everything right in front of them. And once both parties start seeing the information and really listening to each other, it's I find myself sometimes having to sit back in my chair and just let them go, because it's amazing what can happen when the light bulb, if you want to see, the blinders come off, the light bulb goes on, whatever you want to say, they come out of the dark, and they're really focused on moving on with their lives. And they know that, okay, now I see everything and I get it now. And they're able to put down, because again, I'm just taking notes and writing what they're saying. So I'm able to put down what they're discussing. And then by the end of it, you're like, okay, see what you did? Great job.
They get a clear vision of their future. They get a clear vision of the assets and how it's separated. And oh, wow, it's really not so bad as what we thought. And
exactly. Yeah, the problems don't necessarily seem as big as what they were.
Yeah, that's fantastic. The way you're,
and they're fighting for themselves. They're not going through, their lawyers or anything else who may not have a vested interest, like the, man and wife or husband and husband, again, whatever relationship is, right? It's that they're there for their own best interests. And even when it could be a potential bitter situation, bitter separation, you'll sometimes find that there's still that love there, and nobody really wants to hurt the other party. And like I said, when you get past all the emotion and the anger and everything, and get them to start thinking rationally, if you want to put it in that way, they can make some really good headway and hopefully remain friends even after the separation, right?
Well, yeah, that's what I hope to aim when I'm with any of my clients, because I think they don't have to be enemies. They don't have to be best friends anymore, but they can still be amicable. And the children are always going to be in their lives, and there's always going to be weddings and, all kinds of events coming up. And, they should at least be civil to each other. And they did once love each other. So, I mean, it's just unfortunate the life of a marriage sort of broke apart for whatever those reasons are, but that doesn't mean they have to end it with bitterness and hostility, right?
Right. And with mediation, I don't need to know the reason for the breakdown. Right. That's not necessarily the reason why I'm there. Although sometimes when the parties are talking, I had a colleague who was also a mediator, and they actually brought the couple back together.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So, I mean, surprise, surprise to all of us. But yeah, when it came down to it and they finally really listened to each other, on all the points that were causing them, the angst. They were able to work through it and found out that their friendship and their love for one another was a lot stronger than what they thought.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So,
That's the happy ending. I like that part. So does mediation help in the legal fees at all? Like when does it that, once you do mediation, does it help towards the legal fees when you hire a lawyer, or does it totally different cost?
well, there obviously are some costs involved with mediation, and that varies depending on the length of mediation and what exactly the parties are looking for. Does it help with legal costs? I would say absolutely. Because when both parties are willing to, hash everything out and sit down and discuss and make a plan, then it's not the lawyers charging you for every phone call, every email, every text and everything, because this is an open dialogue, so it's them deciding what they need and what they don't need and what they're looking for, and not the lawyers. So by taking them out of at least that part, the parties can actually come to what we call in the mediation business a memorandum of understanding. So this is what both parties have agreed to, and then you can take that memorandum of understanding and put it towards and insert it into your legal separation document.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
So once that's all done, then there's very little input that the lawyers need to hash out after that, right?
Yeah, that's amazing. I think mediation is the way to go. Have you ever had a couple that was really difficult to deal with and that you just sort of had to not offer the services anymore?
Absolutely. Some people get the wrong idea sometimes when it comes to mediation, and they keep looking to the mediator for agreement, pick my side, not her side or his side or whatever. And as they work through it, they're all, well, you have to make the decision, like pointing towards me. And they really didn't understand the point of mediation. And sometimes when you, again, explain to them, I'm not here to make the decision, you are going to make the decision, some of them take offense to it in a sense, and they're like, well, why did we hire you? If you don't do anything.
Oh.
And so in my mind, they're not ready for mediation because they want that judge or if they watch too much American TV, the judge and jury to make the decisions for them, right?
Yeah.
Or if I find that power struggle, that power imbalance where one is so overpowering and the other one is so submissive, mediation might not necessarily work until the submissive party is able to, stand up a little bit for themselves, or is ready to stand up, as well as the aggressor or the more dominant person being willing to reel it in a little bit and really listen. So, and understand that, sometimes the aggressor or the one that has more power in the relationship doesn't truly understand that that's the way they work.
Yeah.
And sometimes by pointing that out, a mediator points it out or separates them, and they go, why did you separate us? And you point certain things out, behaviors, body language, or whatever. They have to sit back. It's like making somebody look in the mirror for the first time, right?
Mm-hmm. The one that has the most hurt feelings is the one that can't make decisions because they're still in too much pain and too much emotions.
Correct. And again, that's where you want to get them counseling or, speak to whoever they feel comfortable with. And again, when they're ready to continue mediation, they feel strong enough, then we'll move on. I've even had some cases where they would only continue or move on if they could have, their sister, brother, friend sitting with them. But as long as the other party is in agreement with that, then we can absolutely move forward. Mm-hmm. I don't ask for inputs from the other person, but sometimes just having that one person holding the hand of the person is all they need. And they're willing to, move forward. And sometimes you even see the hand lets go and they're able to now feel confident. And yeah, so we do whatever we have to help the couple. At least I do. I mean, I don't want to push somebody into mediation that's not ready, or try to make them make a decision when they're not ready to make those decisions. I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it to help, truly, truly help people. So.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm in the same situation where I try to work with my clients, and sometimes it's almost a year we go through coaching just to get them in a really good emotional state and strong enough to make those decisions for their future, or, build the relationship with their children before they decide to, finalize the divorce. So I've had different circumstances where people just need time. They just need time. And I tell them it's one day at a time. We can just get through this. And no one can tell you when you're ready. You'll know when you're ready. If somebody says, oh, I just make a decision, just get it over with. Just go, just sign the paper, get over it, move on with your life. It's not that easy for not, for some people. It's just
No,
not.
I wouldn't imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially when you've invested like 25, 30 years of a marriage, that you've been with somebody for so long. And how do you just automatically switch that off? You just can't do it.
You can't.
There's a process that you have to take, and there's steps that you need to get, to get to and get stronger, and to build yourself to know that, okay, I'm going to be away from this person now. My life for 25, 30 years was getting up to this person next to me, and now I don't have that person anymore. So that's an example.
You have to have focus and clarity in order for the processes to really work for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you had to really think back on mediation for couples, what would be the top 3 things that usually come up on a regular basis that you sort of would work out for them?
Everything from, wow, that's a heated subject, because it's always going to be about the kids, money, finances, and assets, right? So yeah, sometimes you really have to give, after that initial meeting that I was talking about earlier, sometimes you give the couples homework.
Oh, okay.
So that they can write their own notes. So when they come back to that first mediation meeting, you want to see if everyone's in line. So if they write it down as kids, assets, finances, and they both do that, then that's perfect. But sometimes you'll have totally different, like I had one that was pets was above everything, and you're like, pets, okay. And the other party didn't even consider the pets, right? So other one was, jobs, where they were allowed to move. And I'm like, oh, why would you be allowed? Because they still wanted that person in their life or closer to the kids. So they said, you can't move out of a, 50-kilometer radius or whatever. And I'm like, that can't be binding, right? I mean, it's a great suggestion, and it's nice that you're, explaining that to your partner or your soon-to-be ex-partner, that is a big concern, and you really want them to be part of the kid's life. Hence, when you look back on their list, if the kids were right up there, that again helps with how you're going to handle custody and stuff. So again, it's a way to get communication and everything going. So.
Wow, there's so many things that they have to deal with and decisions that they have to make. It's not an easy thing. And it's really helpful when they do have a mediator there that can get them clarity and really build that vision of what's important. And I really support what you do.
Yeah, so mediation, like I said, we're just that guide. If there's subjects that are off limits and that neither party is comfortable in discussing, then that doesn't get discussed. Mm-hmm. However, without naming what the subject could potentially be, I always let the parties know that if that could potentially be a sticking point to moving forward with the separation or divorce or a decision in the future, then you have to consider addressing it at some point, either at, today's session type of thing or at a later session. But don't let it sit there and fester, right? Mm-hmm. Well, because it could potentially hinder the whole process, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, you talked about homework where I have actually, I call it my toolkit for separation and divorce. And I actually sat and worked with my own separation divorce and all the other information that I gathered from all the courses that I've taught regarding separation and divorce and sort of put a booklet together to get them prepared. So if they come to me and then they go to you, the homework will be done.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. Or
That
part
would
of,
be awesome.
yeah, let's say part of the homework, maybe not all of it, but part of
Yeah.
it anyways, or a good portion of it. And then you can do the other part where you can guide them through. So I think that would be a really good team effort there. So what was the longest mediation process that you've ever had? I know we've talked about it could take a few days, a few hours, but what was the longest one that you've ever dealt with? Do you have?
The longest one I ever dealt with took 3 sessions.
Oh, so I thought you were going to come back with a lot longer. So yeah.
No, I've been quite fortunate because, like I said, once the parties do their homework, especially when, discussing finances or anything like that, when they start writing things down on paper and then start discussing it, they might go, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Or the other party brings up something and, oh, I forgot about that. So then you have to take at least that portion of the mediation and put it on hold. And that'll be brought to the next session. So, but you continue on as long as the parties, again, are still not going to get stuck on that and can just move on for now, type of thing. Then we can go through some more items on their checklist, not my checklist, their checklist, and work through it. So.
Wow. So what would be sort of maybe, 2 to 3 fact information that they need to gather before they see you? I know it would be assets and that, but I mean, I use the toolkit to say that they just get all their information, they do a budget and all that. But do you ask for like anything other than that they have to contribute in bringing in as an information?
Part of the initial discussion that I have with them is you also want to clear the air of a few concerns that they might have. And so I always ask them as a separate from, you have to discuss about the finances and kids and pets and household and cars and whatever. What do you want to tell that other person? Because sometimes that can make or break the mediation. In a sense that if there's that anger, still that anger towards that other person, that's going to come out during the mediation. And that could potentially put a stop to really good progress, really good work that the parties are making. Sometimes they just never had the opportunity to tell the other partner how they feel, that they still love them, or even an apology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would really help to give
and sometimes that's just the right amount of emotion that you can bring into a mediation that clears the air a little bit and then can finally get a little bit of closure for them and be able to really focus on what they need to do.
Mm-hmm. So that introduction is a very important step prior to, I gather.
Yeah, because that's, like I said, that's going to be the basis for either moving forward with mediation, perhaps suggesting arbitration, perhaps suggesting more counseling, knowing that they may not necessarily be ready for the process, or, at worst case scenario, they're going to need their lawyers because sometimes the parties just aren't going to talk to one another and they aren't going to make those decisions. They want somebody else to do it and they want somebody else to deal with it. And then in that case, the only other thing to do is bring in your lawyers that specialize in family law. So.
Wow. So it gets to that sometimes.
Mm-hmm. It sometimes does. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well, it's too bad if you would hope to think that, we're adults, we should be mature enough to make those, sort of.
Sometimes I think we're worse than kids in a playground, to tell you the truth. But sometimes kids are actually a little easier to talk to and negotiate with than adults are. So.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I was teaching courses on it, and I still teach courses. it's, there's so much anger that people carry inside, or, especially if there's a lot of situations where people just done so much damage before. So that's why they should just, if you're not, wanting to be in that relationship anymore, just end it. Don't
Yeah,
stay in something to
they
make
they
it.
have to know when to let go.
Exactly. Yeah, you're exactly right. So can you offer any advice to any couples going forward? Like, could you offer them some advice?
The only true advice I can offer couples moving forward is that if they are 100% sure that this is something that they want to continue with, meaning termination of the marriage, then consider mediation if you're ready for it, truly ready for it. And that means bringing out all the good, the bad, and the ugly, and being able to work it out, and with the comfort of knowing that they have that neutral third party in the room that will know when to take a break, and hopefully guide them towards a beneficial conclusion, and truly let them understand that they're in the driver's seat. They control everything. They make the decisions. I'm not the judge. I'm not going to make the final decision. So, and couples also have to know there's going to be no clear winner. There's going to be no clear loser. It's going to be an agreement. I don't know how to stress that more. Nobody's going to win. Nobody's going to lose. Both parties have to give a little, bend a little, and be willing to accept that. And as long as they can accept what they agree upon, then it works.
Yeah, I 100% agree with what you just said. It's not out for who's going to win. It's an actual win-win, because regardless, things are going to be sorted out one way or the other. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And I think it's a little easier pill to swallow, if you want to use that metaphor, than somebody like a judge. And no offense to any judges listening out there, I appreciate everything they do. But when somebody makes a decision for you, there comes resentment
Mhm. Or consequences.
or consequences.
Mhm.
And so again, if you're in mediation and both parties have agreed to the outcome, then at least you can rest easy knowing that you are part of that decision making.
Mhm. Wow. So just to wrap things up, can you describe any of your biggest challenges that you've had with a couple, like that you would sort of remember back and kind of stays with you?
Well, just the anger, I think, is always my biggest fear, because truly knowing the parties is kind of the only setback sometimes that I have, fear in the back of my head, because sometimes men or women, um, I've seen it both sides, they get so angry that sometimes you can almost see that physical wanting to hit or punch somebody type of thing comes out, and that sets me back a little bit. So I'm usually a calm, relaxed person, and I don't want to see either party get to that point. But sometimes when you're discussing certain topics, emotions get heated, and that's where a good mediator has to really pay attention and de-escalate before it exacerbates, and you're in a full-blown situation where you might have to call in the police or something for support. I've only ever seen it once, where somebody just about crawled over the table to get to the other person, and luckily there was another mediator with me, because the couple had decided they wanted two parties there, and yeah. We had to terminate really quickly, and we decided that they would be better off going into the court system rather than dealing with mediation with us, because of that, again, that power imbalance, right? So That's the only concern I usually have when it comes to mediation with couples and going through more of the bitter divorces than the amicable ones, and hence the reason why I do a more enhanced initial screening, I guess, when I have my initial meeting with both parties separately.
Well, yeah, I can see that after that type of experience. I don't blame you at all. So I think that's why they should really come to me, get all that part out. And then I send them to you.
Absolutely, that would help my job or make my job so much easier.
Yeah.
But mediation truly does work when people are ready for it.
Yeah.
And I can't stress that enough. They have to be ready for it.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with you. And I think mediation is a really good way. And I think that's something that's becoming very common now in the process, because seems to be a high ratio of separation and divorce. So I think mediation is a good way to get some things resolved. Well, I have to say thank you again, Darlene, for participating. The information you provided is just amazing. And I know it's going to help a lot of people out there. And I know all our listeners are going to be thankful just to have this information. So I also want to address, keep checking our website for new topics, real life stories and experiences relating to separation and divorce. And always remember, there is a life after divorce. Thank you.
Thank you.